Imagine your team could rate you like an Uber driver. What would be the reason for you not to get 5.0?
I'm doing too much.
Delegation could be one of the founders' trap.
Here's the thing. That 6 million time you're sitting filling in meta tags, it ain't fun. You can get more out of poor and mediocre people by sitting on them.
Speaking about Elon, people always talk how he shoot another rocket into the sky, but no one talks of how many failed attempts, how many failed tests he have been through.
The smartest people are rarely paid well.
This is Adsy Talks. Adsy Talks. Adsy Talks.
So before we start, I just want to tell that I watched your podcasts. I really enjoyed them. You're a really good narrator and storyteller. And I really hope that today we'll be able to build this fruitful dialogue and discuss the topics. These topics are always interesting. I understand that some of the questions you've been answering like tens and maybe more times, but we all understand that the audience is different. We all there is no better way of learning than repeating the best advices, the best practices. So yes, thank you very much for joining, and let's start. Welcome to Adsy Talks. Today we are zooming out. Most podcasts in our niche love talking about tactics, rankings, AI workflows, automations, and that's the fun stuff. But ambitious companies usually hit the ceiling not because they ran out of tactics or automation, but because teams start breaking under the pressure of growth. And today's episode isn't fully about SEO. It's about high growth teams in marketing and PR fall apart and what strong leaders do differently. Our guest is Matt Singers, management coach, consultant, and founder. Matt sees the inner workings of hundreds of agencies and operators, and he knows exactly where real bottlenecks are hiding. Matt, you work with founders, agencies, and C-level execs. Here's the question. What happens when a company grows faster than its management can handle? Who feels the impact first?
I think it's not just who feels the impact, but fundamentally what happens is your growth ends up stagnating, right? So you're trying to hire people. And the problem is when you're hiring above, let's call it above your management capacity, what happens specifically is that you're not getting the ROI on the people. So you're adding more people, but more things aren't getting done because you don't have the right people in place to manage them. You don't have potentially the right systems and processes, and therefore you're not actually getting an ROI. So it happens that the same step happens one at the early stage. So when you have a brand new company that's opening up, right, a founder can typically manage sort of 8 to 10 people. And after that, it starts just being inefficient. So every time they hire an additional person, they add some capacity, but their inability to manage anymore is basically meaning that what you add is probably less inefficient than the time you spend managing that additional capacity, right? And the same thing tends to happen around 25 to 30 people. When you have one layer of management, you have some scale in place, but you don't have enough qualified managers. And when that's the case, what tends to happen is that you don't see the growth, right? So you don't have the right people in place who are ready to step up. You don't have the right people managing. So that's a challenge. And then the third step is typically 50 to 60 people. Whereas at that level, what tends to happen is that you're communicating through multiple layers. So as a leader and as a founder, you're typically a couple of steps away from the people at the bottom. And the challenge is communication through multiple layers is sort of the third sort of critical growth phase for a smaller business. As soon as you come out of that, things become a lot easier, right? Because above that level, there's still growth pains. But above that level, adding more people, it's kind of doing more of the same. So you obviously still need to have good leadership, good management, good vision, and all this stuff. but it's the issues becomes more about resource allocation than it is about growth specifically, right?
Yes, that is true. And today we will dive deep into that question. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about your background. I want to acknowledge a huge milestone. You just wrapped up the latest SEO Mastery Summit in Saigon. And I want to congratulate you on that. And I can only imagine the energy and late night nerves required to pull off that sold out event for 3 years running. It's a massive hit.
All years actually, but yeah.
4 years. And you have a unique point. You aren't just looking at charts, you were witnessing the live evolution on how leaders in our industry think. So I want to talk about this event, and I really want you to tell us this story. And I want to start with the origin. How did even this event start? You're a management expert, so why build a massive SEO summit? What was that moment when you realized that industry needed this specific gathering?
Yeah, so to take 2 steps back, I guess. When I first started out as a full-time coach, or when I first started my coaching company, um, I had been doing a lot of stuff in the world of SEO. So I had been building out affiliate sites and stuff like that while I worked in the corporate world. So I already had a lot of experience and exposure to the world of SEO. So when I first started out coaching, actually I realized SEOs was a great niche, because most SEOs are introverts and not necessarily very natural at communicating with people and people management. So that actually meant that SEO since day one, back in when I started the company back in 2013, SEOs have been a large part of my sort of core clientele. And I think today they probably make up about 35% of my clients is SEO, either SEO businesses or agencies or likes, right? So I've always done a lot with SEO companies, and at the same time I've spoken a lot of SEO conferences. So pretty much since 2015 I've spoken at hundreds of events. So I'll say probably 300 or something like that. So I've been around the world of SEO for a really long time. What happened was during COVID, all the events shut down. Obviously, people couldn't travel, people couldn't meet, all that good stuff. And what ended up happening was that I was like, well, all my travel plans are canceled. And I ended up instead doing one of these online summits, because I was like, well, I can't connect to all these people I normally connect to, so let me find a different avenue. So we set up online summits. We ran them every 5-6 months, and we managed to run like probably 4 or 5 of them. And we got up to 10,000 people at the biggest one of them. So we had a huge email list and so on. And as soon as towards the end of COVID, people kind of got really tired of like Zoom calls and webinars and all this good stuff, right? So what happened was I was kind of seeing that trend of we were getting less views, we were getting less interest. And I was like, okay, well, COVID is over. People really want to meet in person. And I was like, well, why don't we just turn this into a live event? Because again, I've spoken at hundreds of events. So really taking this and turning it into a live event would not be so difficult. Every time you go to an event, there's always things you would do a little bit differently if it was you. So you always look at things like, hey, I would have done this different, this different. It doesn't mean the events are bad, but we all have different tastes. I'm sure most people coming to our event would do some things differently as well. So that was really the starting point. So we kicked off very early. As soon as COVID opened up, we took a risk. So we put a bunch of money on the table, booked a hotel and all that. A lot of the other events at the time were kind of afraid, because a lot of them had lost a lot of money when COVID came, because they had put down deposit they didn't get back. So a lot of the other events were a little bit afraid. I was definitely also not very confident, but put down money, said booked a hotel and said, let's do this thing. Booked the venue, set up everything, and we were just waiting for the announcement of a new COVID type or whatever, but it never happened. So we kicked off the event, and the first event was absolutely epic. Managed to get all the best speakers around to the event. I've been lucky enough to know a lot of very great people, so they were all very happy to come along and see us. We have people like Matt Diggity, Kyle Roof, Koray. Yeah, lots of great people coming from all over the world. And that, yeah, that basically just made one absolutely killer event, and we decided to keep doing that, and that's been the thing ever since. So I really love hosting an event in Asia specifically, and the core reason is that we get people from all over the world. So we get Europeans, we get Americans, we get Australians, we get Asians. People are really coming from everywhere, even South America. And because of that, there's so much mix of ideas and stuff. One of the things I noticed doing this event is that a lot of Americans all do things the same way. A lot of Europeans all do things the same way. A lot of Australians do things the same way. But when you mix them all up and put them all in a room, they all learn a bunch of stuff. So I think that's probably one of the biggest sort of benefits. The second thing is that when you put an event in a place like Asia, when people have to fly halfway around the world to get there, it's often just the top people, right? Like if I go to an event like Brighton SEO, most of the attendees are agency workers, or it's yeah, different types. And the challenge with that is, it's if you're a very good SEO, it's hard to find the people that you really want to connect with, right? Whereas when you come to our event in Vietnam, like everyone is very high level, everyone is very, very good at what they're doing, and they're typically the business owner of very high level SEO, right? So it's yeah, that's sort of the situation.
I see. This is a really cool story. And I just wanted to ask, you've mentioned that people came there from all over the world, and Vietnam was selected specifically just to gather people from different parts of the world, or was it something else? Why Vietnam exactly?
Yeah, I've been living a good bit of time in Asia in general. I've spent a lot of time in Vietnam, and really love Vietnam. Whenever I do an event, I generally always suggest doing it in a big hub city, because the ease of getting there is critically important, right? So whenever I'm looking at doing any types of events, I want big hub city. In Asia, there was already some SEO events in Thailand. So I was the options I was looking at was either doing it in Philippines, doing it in Vietnam, or doing it in Malaysia. So culture-wise and so on, Philippines was an option. It was just it was way more difficult to find the right type of location. It is also a little bit more difficult to travel for some people. Vietnam, we were able to find really great location. It was a great spot, and again, the Vietnam or the Saigon airport is extremely well connected to both Europe and US and Australia. So that was kind of also a big sort of decider of where it ended up being. We've had many questions of why we're not doing it in some small beach town so people can go to the beach. But realistically, if people is coming from Europe or the US, if they need to change flight twice instead of once, it makes a huge difference in both in people's joy, but also people's willingness to want to go. And we want to attract the best people, right?
Yeah, I can only imagine all the logistical nightmares. And can you tell where the that one unexpected challenge that you faced while organizing this event, like some really fun or challenging story?
Yeah, there's been many. I think sometimes just things like visa, for example, can be a little bit challenging. So that there are some nations, like luckily with Asia, most nations have a relatively easy time getting there. But we've definitely had people wanting to come from like Nigeria and some of the South American countries where it's been a little bit more difficult. Obviously, we are eager to bring in everyone that want to come, but obviously there is certain visa requirements and so on. That's the same anywhere in the world you do it. But yeah, that's definitely been challenging. We've luckily had really good venues we're working with and have worked with, right? So our venues have generally been extremely helpful and extremely good, which a big game changer. Luckily, we've always had our speakers show up. So I mean, there's typically one or two who pulls out sort of last minute, but obviously as a good organizer, we always expect that, and we always have plans in place when that happens. So generally, we haven't had any big disasters, I would say.
I see. That's really cool because during the COVID times, I can only imagine all the little things that can appear out of nowhere. And speaking about that, during the years of this event that you organized, we've all witnessed the birth and development of AI. And how did the mindset of the founders that attended your conference change through these years?
Yeah, I mean, AI is definitely new and it's definitely changing the world landscape, right? No doubt about that. I would say last year's event, there was often kind of a lot of sort of confusion or, a lot of people are hit by these content updates and there was a lot of uncertainty. I'll say this year, there was a lot of more comfort around AI. And a lot of people were like, okay, we get it now. This is what we're doing. So a lot of people doing really, really cool stuff with AI at the event. A lot of people, like, I think originally there was a bit of fear, but reality is that when you're dealing with people who are at the forefront of technology, right? Like, yeah, all SEOs always have FOMO. They feel they're doing nothing compared to their neighbor. But when you take an average SEO and what they do with AI versus what an average human is doing, it's top 0.5%. So SEOs in general are way ahead of the curve. So even though they see the risk and the challenges, being part of the change, being really good, like being at the forefront of it, definitely creates a ton of opportunity, right? And I see a lot of great friends that have done absolutely amazing things, made a lot of money, generated a lot of success with the help of AI, right?
Hmm. That's true. And right now, I want to offer you to play a fun game. And this part of this content will be used in the search. So it will be like a really fun, entertaining bit. And I'm going to ask you some absurd, fun questions related, of course, to our topic. And I want you to reply as we speak, like without no explanations, nor hesitating, just shoot straight to the point. Okay?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Let's go. If a bad delegation became an Olympic sport, which department would win gold?
Web devs.
If a management style were a movie genre, what would it be? A thriller, a comedy, or a survivor horror?
Depends so much on the person, but probably Survivor, I would say.
That's true. Been there, done that. Imagine your team could rate you like an Uber driver. What would be the reason for you not to get 5.0?
I'm doing too much stuff.
It's like a question during the interview. What's your like? What can you tell is like something not good about you? Like I work too much, something like that. Okay, let's move on. If the team is like a family, why does everyone want to move to a different family?
Most people think the grass is greener on the other side, but they don't realize that it's all about them.
That's true. Sometimes not, but in majority of cases, yes, that is. If a company has values, where are they actually stored? In Notion, in people's hearts, or in a folder so obvious that nobody have ever bothered to open it?
Although companies have values, they are not stored, but they are being displayed on what people do on a day-to-day basis. So what actually happens in the company is the company's values.
That's true. In the long run, especially. And the last one. If a manager says, this is priority number one, how many number one priorities can exist simultaneously?
Most companies and most people have at least 17, but in general, there should only be one number one priority.
True, true. Okay, let's move to the serious stuff. I want to talk about very often smart teams can build weak organizations. And I want to start with this question. We're all seen teams of brilliant specialists who execute $1 million strategies, and yet the organization itself remains fragile and chaotic. And from your experience, where exactly is that fault line where individual brilliance stops translating into organizational strength?
Yeah, actually, the challenge is in a little bit of a different place. So, what I would say from a business standpoint, intellect rarely translate to results. if you look at it in the history, the smartest people are rarely paid well. And the reason for that is smart people, the smartest people, when you look at very high IQ people in general, the smartest people rarely do. They're very good at thinking, but their ability to do is often significantly less. When they do, they tend to do slower, they tend to do more carefully. And success in business is about doing, not about thinking. So the people who generally win a business is the people who take action, who make things happen and move the ball forward without fear of failure, right? So when you look at someone like Elon Musk, he's a very great example of someone who's aggressively always pushing, like pushing deadlines. He's challenging his team to come up with amazing stuff and do things that have never been done. He's not afraid of failure, right? He's like, let's launch a rocket. Here's the deadline. Let's launch the rocket and let's see what happens. There might only be a 30% chance it works, but let's do it. The problem with very smart people is that they don't launch the rocket until they're 100% certain that it's going to work. And that typically takes 10x the time. So the challenge with most intellectual people is that they're holding back both themselves and their companies due to their, let's call it risk avoidance or their intolerance to risk, right? So high risk tolerance is a very good translator into business success. So high risk tolerance combined with focused action is the two core things that you need for success in business.
Yeah, and speaking about Elon, we also people always talk how he shoot another rocket into the sky, but no one talks of how many like failed attempts, how many failed tests he have been through, and he coped with that. So I do agree with you on that. And speaking about this, let's say we have a company. Money is rolling and the product itself is selling well, and sometimes the company forgets about the systems and they don't focus on management. They focus just like on how well products works. And from your perspective, isn't focusing on management is more important than worrying about the how well the products works?
You need it all, right? It's like any company needs sales, marketing, operations, and finance, right? It's like if you have the greatest product in the world but no one to sell it, you'll never sell. If you have an amazing sales team and nothing to sell, you'll never win, right? If you have an amazing marketing team, again, with no product, you're not going to win. So any business needs it all, right? One of the biggest challenges with most SEOs is, they're so good at SEO, they're so good at business, they're so good at management. And the problem is they're trying to learn like 1% more, thinking that's what's going to change the game when it's not, right? Like really good SEOs, if they want to make money, which is look like most SEOs don't, they need to invest in their business skills and the leadership and management skills, right? What they would learn spending one day on either of those will give them more than they'll ever benefit from learning one more SEO hack and all this kind of stuff, right? So it's in any situation, it's always a balance. Like the same thing, if you just focus on good leadership and management, but you have a shit product and you have no marketing, you're not going anywhere, right? So everything is about balance. However, saying that, core things, when I build businesses, the core focus is twofold. It is number one, hiring great people. If you're surrounded by great people, the world become a lot easier. The second step is managing them well. Because if you hire great people and don't manage them well, you're not going to get great results. So if you hire great people and manage them well, they can figure out most problems in the business for you, right? So the whole point with most business owners is that they are holding the companies back because they're doing it all themselves. And they think that it's the right way, or they think it's a good way, but fundamentally the only thing it does is it slows down the growth of the company.
And speaking about marketing, how do you think creative teams, do they need a different management style than just like a discipline, regardless of the department?
No, it's not so much about different departments. It is about you always need managers that learn to understand different types of people. Because if you have a marketing department, that can be SEOs in marketing department, and they're not necessarily typical marketing people, right? So the core aspect of management and what I spend a significant amount of time, both myself and educating my team on, is understanding different people and how they work differently. Because if I'm managing yourself versus myself, the way I'd manage the two of us is different, right? And as soon as you add people to the mix who are different types of personality, you generally want to manage them a little bit different. And that is one of the core management skills, is learning the difference in people.
That's true. And speaking about the management, delegation could be one of the founder's trap during management. And sometimes founders can perceive delegation as dump and forget. And in reality, that's usually where the nightmare begins. And I want to understand, how do you delegate complex processes, for example, PR strategy or something similar, without lowering the quality bar?
Yeah, so actually what I see the most is not necessarily dump and forget. The biggest reason why delegation fail is actually failure of mindset more than anything. So it's not necessarily about not lowering quality. If you say you're a founder of a company and you're doing so many things, right? And one of the things you're doing, let's say you're delivering SEO to clients. The challenge is your plate is full. You're spending all day, every day doing this stuff. The problem is you doing this means you're not doing this, right? So you're not doing the higher level stuff that really moves the company forward. And most founders get stuck in this aspect where they're focused on doing the things, they're focused on delivering. Here's the mindset. If you don't get out of that focus and do the stuff that really moves the company forward, your business will grow incredibly slowly. Right. And again, this is the fear of failure, the fear of making mistakes is hindering things, because they're so afraid of making mistakes that they don't let go. So the second aspect here is that the way you or any business owner have grown into where they are right now is they had a person at some point in their life trust them and give them responsibility. No one is where they are today if no one trusted them and gave them responsibility, right? But they're not doing that with their team. So here's the thing. Let's say I hired you to do some SEO. And as I was running my SEO company, I'm like, okay, for me to grow this company, I need to step back. I need to focus more on sales and marketing. And I know that that might, for a period of time, lower the focus or the quality of the SEO we're doing. But if I don't do it, the company is not going to grow, right? Or it will grow extremely slowly. So the way to do it is acknowledge the risk and say, well, do I want to be a small company for the rest of my life, or do I want to grow a big company? And I'm ambitious, so I want to grow a bigger company. So the way to look at it is not saying, oh, but we're not doing everything perfect. It is, I might lose one or two clients, but if I can put my time in another direction, I can get 5 or 10 new ones. Now, if I lose 2 clients or get 5 new ones, that's going to help grow my company, right? So if I was to hire you to come in, do the SEO, even though you have a lower skill set at it than me, potentially, what will happen is, if all of your time, right now I'm doing all of this stuff, not just the SEO. If all of your time is just on doing SEO, within a certain period of time, you will become better at it than I ever was. So the whole point is that it is an investment in saying, yes, we might have a short-term challenge, or we might have, short-term do something less good. But the time that I free up and that I can push in other directions will help the company grow. And what this will fundamentally do is, over time, make our company way stronger. Because bringing you in, giving you the ownership and responsibility for this will, over time, grow you and make you way better than I ever was. Right? So that's the mindset you want to be in. The challenge people have is they don't delegate the responsibility. They delegate tasks. So if I was saying, Anthony, I want you to go and build 4 links in this particular way for this client, you don't learn very much from that. If I say, Anthony, I don't have the time to do link building. Here's a process of what we're doing right now. I want you to take it, and I want you to do the best you can, right? Here's the goal. I want you to build minimum 10 links a month, and I want you to build them within this criteria. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'll never help you. I'm not saying I'll never answer questions. That's not what I'm saying. But the whole point, I'm giving you the ownership of the output, the end goal, aka building 10 links that have a certain level of quality, right? If you know that that's your goal, if you start doing your task, you're like, okay, how can I do this? How can I do this? You're focused on how do I get to the end point. The problem when you're delegating tasks, if I'm just saying, okay, Anthony, I want you to sit down, I want you to write these outreach emails, I want you to send 100 emails every day. The problem is you don't really focus much on the output. You don't focus on the goal. You just focus on sending 100 emails. So if you open the phone book and email 100 random people, or if you email 100 people that get you great replies, for you, it doesn't really matter because your only goal is to email 100 people. So when people are delegating tasks instead of responsibility, what they get is, one, people who don't take ownership and take responsibility. Two, they don't generally get the end goal delivered as well as they could. And three, the people are not growing because the people they're not learning how to improve things. They're not like, okay, I got a link by sending this message. Let me try this message. Let me try this. They don't play around. They don't try and do everything they can to hit the goal. They're just sending out their 100 emails.
Just following
Following their
the
SOP.
assignment. Yeah. And I feel that because usually when I want to delegate something, there's always, this inner battle when you want to delegate a task, and because you know that you will have a full control of the outcome. You know how to do this task. You want your team member to fully follow your flow, and that is why you think that the outcome will be exactly as you want. And the next way is not to delegate the task and the actual assignment, but to tell like that you need to do the task, and your team should find out how to do this task. And maybe the most difficult one, but the best one way is how to delegate is to tell what you want to get, and the team must figure out how they are going to do this without specific tasks. They should figure out the task and how to manage the task. So I feel you on this very well.
One of the key things when it comes to this, right, is my goal is not for my staff to be as good as I am. My goal is for my staff to be way better than I am. And it's very, very simple. If I'm sitting in a room full of my team members and they're all smarter than me, then I have a big fucking problem. Pardon the language. I want to sit in a room and I want to be advised on what I should do from people who are better than me. And the only way I can grow a team that is better than me is by letting them grow, take ownership, and develop. And over time, they will get better than me on the individual areas that they are.
Somewhere I knew the information that you've just told me, but you've told it so inspirationally that I want to, after our podcast, I want to run to my team and start applying these methods, because of course we all know this, but people rarely apply this, because one thing is to know how to do this and watch different podcasts or online lessons, and the other thing is to apply this and actually give your team or your colleagues this responsibility and allow them to make mistakes, to learn and everything. So yeah, it's always like this inner battle on deciding to do this. So yeah, thank you very much for this. To relax a bit, I want to play with you another quick game, and this will be our favorite one, true or false. And we all know that in management there are a lot of stereotypes, a lot of myths, and a lot of things that they worked previously, they don't work now, or they were debunked as a myth that actually doesn't work. So the first one will be the following. There was a saying that a great specialist can become a great manager. What would you say?
True.
Why do you think that?
It's very simple. If someone can learn how to master any skill, they can learn how to be a great manager. The big issue that most people have is they assume that because I'm a great engineer, I am also a great leader. that being a great engineer doesn't make me a great leader. It's two very different skill sets. But if someone can learn to be a top level engineer, they can learn to become a top level manager. But it's different skill sets that they need to learn. Now, if you give me the best sales guy and the best engineer, and you let me train them in management, they will become top level managers. It doesn't mean they are top level managers by being a great sales guy or by being a great engineer, but management and leadership, it's a skill. You can learn it, but it is not the same skill as many of these specialist roles.
Yeah, and it all depends on if the person is actually interested in this, because there are people that like to do what they know how to do perfectly, but they don't want to scale and to take this headache of managing teams. They just want to do what they are doing. So it all depends.
The amount of SEOs coming to me and saying, "Hey, I don't want to manage people. I just want to do SEO." Reality is, again, it comes back to it's typically fear, and it's typically, again, low threshold for risk. Reality is most of them want to build a big successful business and make a lot of money. The problem is they're doing the thing they know how to do and they're comfortable with. And this come back to the success, or the first question you asked me, this come back to the success with intelligent people with success. The problem is a lot of intelligent people do the things they're comfortable doing instead of doing the things they need to be doing to become more successful, at least financially, right? Now, I'm not saying finance is the only measure of success. It's definitely not. If you want to sit and do SEO and not make a lot of money, go ahead, right? But if you're telling everyone around you that you want to build a great company and become very rich, then you need to take the actions that mirror that outcome. And that is not being the one doing all the SEO.
Yeah, it's always about stepping out of the comfort zone.
And here's the most people I've worked with, like many of the really good SEOs, people like Matt Diggity, like they have said this at the first time, I just want to do SEO, right? 9 months after working with me, they're like, yeah, I don't want to do SEO anymore. I just want people doing it. Because here's the thing, that 6 million time you're sitting filling in meta tags, it ain't fun, right? It ain't fun. Now, sometimes some of the high level stuff can be a little bit fun, but you know what the most fun thing is? The most fun thing is getting an idea in the morning, putting something in a chat or picking up your phone and sending a voice message. And by the end of the day, it's already done without you having to do it. That is my number one fun tip, right?
Yeah, I really dream about that, and I really want to move towards that you mentioned. Okay, the next one. A strong corporate culture can compensate for weak leadership. Is it true or false?
What's the in-between option? I would say it's false to some degree. A strong culture is always helpful, but if you don't have good leadership, like good leadership is all about vision, where are we going, what are we trying to achieve? And it's like having a boat. Like if you have a boat that's not sinking because it's solid, but you're just going around in circles, then you know, that's not very helpful. I mean, it's good to have a good boat so you don't drown, but it doesn't mean you're getting anywhere. So good leadership is always about guiding you and directing you in the direction and directing the company in the direction you want to go.
So, and the next one will be interesting because COVID times showed us how and what the remote work could be. Leaders try to return their people back to the offices because they think that the remote work is the root of all productivity issues. What do you think?
I agree and I disagree. So you can get more out of poor and mediocre people by sitting on them. However, and that there's definitely, even with the best people, there's definitely some gains by having them physically next to each other, right? So I would not say that there's no gains through physically being in an office. That would not be correct. However, the benefit with remote work is often you have a significantly stronger talent pool to access. So you can access people worldwide with various skill sets at various cost mechanisms. So for example, if you take a company in Silicon Valley, right, if they need to hire a mediocre developer at 20 grand a month, right, they can go and get a significantly higher talent at a lower cost. And that's higher talent at a lower cost will often make up, let's call it the productivity gap or the synergy gap between having them in an office versus having them remote. If you are a company like, again, let's take Elon Musk or let's take Meta. If you're a company that hired the best people on the planet, so if you have 20 of the best AI engineers on the planet, having them sitting in a room together definitely benefits. Now, if you would pick 20 mediocre people, have them sitting in a room versus the 20 best being remote, you would win with the 20 best being remote, right? So it is, I would say there's definitely there's a lot of nuances to it. Now, saying that, the greatest leaders get great output from remote staff, right? Poor leaders often get very poor output from remote staff. So what it does, and I had a lot of people come to me during COVID and ask, like, how do we manage remotely? Like, what should we do? Does it work? And it's the same thing. If you have great leaders, you're gonna get great results even with remote work, right? So I would say leadership and management becomes way more important if you're looking at a remote work scenario. Whereas there's natural things like building relationship with your team. When you're physically in an office, no matter how much of an asshole you are, how much of an introvert, when you walk into the office in the morning, you're still gonna say good morning. Whereas if you're hiding behind Slack and you're just sitting there hoping no one ever messaged you and avoiding all conversations as a bad leader, then you can probably get away with things that you shouldn't get away with.
That's true. It's it's like this meme when someone messages you during the working hours, have to do the job that you actually need to do. You've talked about the quality, and what about the speed? How do you think fast-growing teams should sacrifice the quality for speed?
I would say it's the same, whether you're fast growing or slow growing, that there isn't a right or wrong choice, right? I would say generally, if you're a brand new leader and have never been leading people before, there's definitely some value in leading your first people in person to learn and to grow, right? But again, sometimes it's not financially feasible, right? Like again, if you live in the US or if you live in the middle of London, and it might be very difficult for you in the early stages of your company to afford to hire someone local at the level you want. So maybe remote is a better option, but you generally want to get to know the people. You want to generally meet the people. So, it might be cheaper for you to hire a remote person and go physically meet them and see them in person at some point, right?
Yeah. Personally, I'm working with a team remotely for the past 2.5 years, and I do feel how this is different from working at the office. And I want to dive deep into this topic because I know that you are this expert. For our listeners, it's the dominance, influence, and steadiness compliance system of management. And I want you to tell us in the remote environment where we cannot see a person in front of us and their body language. How does knowing a person's type from this system become different between a high performing team and a toxic Slack channel?
Right. So actually, I probably want to answer this question slightly different. So some people work exceptionally well remotely, and some people don't work exceptionally well remotely. So when you're looking at humans, some of us are very comfortable spending all day behind a computer and not talking so much to other humans. And some humans need constant social interaction all day, every day. If you're one of these very social people, you might have a really hard time sitting at home. And this, what we saw during COVID, was a lot of people with depression. Like there's a lot of people who really need regular social interaction, right? And sometimes Zoom calls or whatever conversations like ours can help on that. But in many remote roles, depending on the role, there's often not so much of it. So I would say the remote environment is significantly better for certain types of people than others, right? So I think that's the starting point of understanding, because if you understand that, that then sort of flows down the road, right? So you can see, like, a lot of times salespeople, for example, quite a few good salespeople that struggle being in a home-based environment because they're used to the bus, they're used to the the competitors, like how many sales have you closed today, and like the hustle and the bustle, and sometimes a Slack message is not the same for them, right? Like they often miss that physical human interaction, and so it's more a question of understanding, what are the people that work well remotely, and there's definitely certain people I would not hire in a remote role, right? There's definitely certain types of people that I would personally avoid. Like our company have been remote 100% way before it was fashionable, right? So my first business in 2013, like we pretty much we had a small office at one point for a little bit of staff, but the majority of the time most people have been fully remote. So we've done it for many years, and there's definitely people who will struggle with that work environment. So if you get the right people in the right roles that work well in a remote environment, you're generally gonna be you're significantly more likely to succeed.
And how do you think, is there a trick to manage a team without having a tracker of person's work or a tracker of his the tasks? Is there a way to manage the team without that?
For sure. Generally, when you manage people, you want to manage by outcome. So what is it you're looking to be delivered, right? So what is the outcome you're looking for? So it comes back to the delegation part, right? Fundamentally, if you say, hey, do this task 100 times a day, and someone's half falling asleep doing it, versus if they feel the ownership, if they feel the responsibility, they're like, yep, I'm going to do this thing, right? So if you take an example, let's take customer service, right? If you have someone that's like, okay, every day you need to sit down, you need to answer minimum 100 emails, here's the process of how to do it, go. You sit down, you do it. When it's 5 p.m., you go home. If I'm like, Anthony, I don't have the time to manage our customer service. I want you to own it. I want you to be responsible for it because it's important for the business. And I really need someone to look after this because I don't have the time, right? Even when it's 5 p.m. and you see 2 more emails, you're probably more likely to go and answer those 2 emails because you feel ownership, right? Now, it's not a question of, I don't want just work more hours. That's not the goal. But the point is that, it's sometimes that little bit extra, sometimes that little extra step, sometimes that little extra effort goes a long way. And when people feel ownership, when they feel responsible, they are so much more inclined to do that.
That is true. And how do you think, can one spot the potential burnout and quiet quitting in the remote environment before it's too late?
Yeah, so again, you generally want to have solid goals to your staff, right? You want to have some goals of what they're supposed to be delivering. So again, if you're doing link building, if I tell you you need to do, we need to build minimum 20 links a month or whatever, like you want to track that. I talk generally with a lot of my team, I talk a lot about performance, right? Because I don't look at how much you work or how many emails you send. I look at the result you deliver because that is the most important thing to me, right? Now, here's reality. Some people in my team can get away with working a little bit less and keep delivering great results. However, the people who really want to win and the people who really want to succeed work their hours and over deliver because they know if they over deliver consistently, I can better afford to give them a pay rise. I can better afford to give them a promotion. I can better afford to give them new projects, right? So, can you get away with less? Yes. Do the best people want to get away with less? No. The best people that you can find, the best people you want to surround yourself with, want to deliver. They want to over deliver, right? And they even when you push them aggressively, they want to deliver more than you're asking them for.
That's really great words. And we're now moving to the final bit of our podcast, and this will be the traditional game. This time it will be Blitz, and I want you to give short answers to these questions. So the first one would be, what breaks a business faster, bad hiring or bad management?
Bad hires. There's very few things more detrimental to a company than bad hires. And what I mean with that is sometimes if you have a team of 20 people, sometimes one bad hire who, like particularly if they have a really negative attitude or the likes, can really bring your entire team down, right? Like I've actually seen companies nearly collapse. Just one bad hire would sometimes literally destroy the values of the company, because they come in, they're often like a bull in a china shop. They're loud, they're vocal, they're unhappy, they don't agree with anything. And yeah, one bad hire can definitely be way more. I mean, bad management can also be crazy expensive, but a bad hire can, the impact of one person can be significantly more than typically one bad manager. Let's say it like that.
I have a story from my experience when I had to gather a team or a sales team. And my first hire was an excellent sales manager. He was an outstanding specialist and he was doing like great sales. And when time came to scale the team, I hired several more people. We started working, and approximately half a year into that, I noticed that the team starts to argue a lot, to starts to fall apart, because that first person who was really good in the beginning as a solo sales, he was kind of toxic. I don't want to talk bad about him. He's a really great specialist, but I had to make a really tough decision when I had to say goodbye to him in order to save the team, because by the time we had like 10 or 15 people in the team, and I need to make the decision to let him continue and potentially had my team fall apart, or say goodbye to him and save the entire team from falling apart.
Let me add a comment to that. I'm very confident the guy had zero leadership or management training.
Why do you think that?
Well, because if he learned how to lead and manage, he would not have had those problems in most cases.
I see. I see. Well, this will make me rethink and return to that moment to understand like what actually led to that problem. Okay, the next one, a management tip that sounds smart but actually kills the teams.
Ooh, there's probably also many. Time management, right? Time management is a very, very flawed concept in its whole. As a human, you cannot manage time. Time happens 1 second at a time. What most people are trying to learn is how to do more stuff in less time, right? If you're not winning, it's not because you're not doing enough, it's because you're doing the wrong things. The real thing, if you feel you need time management, what you really need is priority management. So many people, like particularly this hustle culture where people are working 12-hour days, they're losing because they're working 12-hour days doing the wrong things. And the problem is they feel good. They feel, yeah, I've been told to hustle. I'm sitting doing this. Like at the end of the day, the brain is so drained, they can't do good stuff. So they open the customer service queue to see if there's something, even though they have a customer service person. They do all this stuff they shouldn't be doing just to feel good about themselves working 12 hours. But the real thing is that if they're not succeeding, it's because they're doing the wrong thing. So working less, freeing up more of your brain power, both to do the things you should be doing better and to make sure you identify the right things that really move your business forward, is a way, way better use of time.
That is true. And the next one would be interesting. Can you tell one management habit that should be scaled?
One-on-ones. So one-on-ones is the number one best management tool out there. So sitting down, having a one-on-one conversation with the people who report directly to you, talking with them about their performance, personal conversations about who they are, their life. Here's the thing. Managers tell me all the time, my staff don't care. My question to them is, do you care about them? Here's the thing. If people feel you care about them, they will care about you and your company, or you and your team, right? If people feel I am just a number here, no one gives a shit, they're not going to care, right? So caring starts from you as a leader, as a manager. Do one-on-ones, talk with people, get to know them. If you have someone reporting to you and you don't know the name of their spouse or their kids, you're not managing well, right? Get to know them, care about them, talk with them about performance, talk with them about the future.
That's a really good advice. I will write it down and I will try to implement it more because, yes, I do have one-on-ones, but I think not as often as it should be. And of course, I'm trying not to make meetings just to make meetings. But yeah, I feel what you said because I had a colleague that had a questionable performance. And one of the reasons was that everyone in the company who worked with him, they were trying just to give him work and let him do this work and nothing more. And he felt kind of lost. And when we had our first one-to-one, when we talked about personal stuff, about work, and we had like several meetings after that as well, and I felt that he started to care, to actually care. He improved his performance. We actually worked the way with him to avoid some problems that he had previously. And right now, I can proudly tell that this person became a better version of himself because I was the one in the entire company who had these meetings with him and who actually had a dialogue and showed that I was showed that I cared about him.
Yeah, and I'll give you a cheat code as well. Go and sign up for heyramp.com. Best tool out there to track your one-on-ones, performance reviews, and stuff like that. That will, implement it in the business because it will give you overview to see who is doing their one-to-ones, how's people performing, and so on. And this is particularly when you grow a company, knowing and making sure the one-on-ones are done throughout your organization is critically important.
Mhm. So it's hiramp.com, right?
Heyramp, ramp.com.
Wow, hirap. That's cool. Noted that. Actually, this podcast, I feel that this podcast is not only would be useful to our listeners, but to myself, because a lot of the things that you've said today, I will definitely try to implement and start doing with my team as well. So thank you very much for that, Mads. And the last question would be, can you finish the sentence? A company stops scaling when?
When leaders stop leading.
That's actually philosophical.
Yeah. Well, generally, it could be many things, right? So generally, a company have a block. So every company is structured, 99% of company is structured the same way. CEO, sales, marketing, operation, finance, and sometimes tech, right? At every point, one of those areas is a bottleneck. Because if there's no bottleneck, you're just growing. But you generally, a company grows until there's a bottleneck somewhere. Right? So you either struggle with sales, you struggle with marketing, you struggle with delivery, or you struggle with finances or cash flow. So there's always a bottleneck somewhere, right? And as a CEO, you're one of your big focuses is figuring out where is the bottleneck right now, and how do we clear that for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, that is true. Okay, Mats. Truly, I had like a lot of questions, but I think we may save them for the later. And today was sharp, packed with advices, exactly how I imagined and how I wanted this conversation to be. And I just want to sum up that sometimes growth stealing is not about the market or the AI or other features. It's the way how we lead our people. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for being with us. This was Adsy Talks. Subscribe if you want more, and we'll see you in the next episodes. Bye.
This is Adsy Talks.